Liberty University, we've talked about from time to time on the show, it has a lot of problems, but new reporting on the way they've treated those who have been sexually assaulted, those who have been raped. This reporting done by ProPublica shows how fundamentally messed up this system is. So they've done interviews at ProPublica with more than 50 former students and staffers of Liberty University, as well as looked at records from more than a dozen individual cases, showing how an ethos of sexual purity has led to school officials discouraging, dismissing, and even blaming female students who have tried to come forward with claims of sexual assault. So those are, big claims. They bear out, as you're gonna see. So there's something called the Liberty Way. This philosophy of the school, I guess, covers nearly all aspects of a student's life and includes bans on drinking and, quote, being in any state of undress with a member of the opposite sex. What the hell does that mean, any state of undress? If I take off my hat, I'm slightly more undressed than I was. But I wanna be very clear that this code of conduct that very specifically stops you from doing certain things, they call the Liberty Way. Weird and ironic. Unfortunately, that's where it stops being fun. So many people do not abide by this. This is a university. And so I hope that you know that in America and universities, there is a huge epidemic of sexual assaults, and Liberty University is not immune to that either. But it is a school where sexual relations outside of a, quote, biblically ordained marriage between a natural born man and a natural born woman are not permissible. They do allow mental thoughts and temptations. They don't regulate that. If they could, don't you think that they would, but they don't. You can do romantic displays of affection like hand holding, kissing, and dating. I've never considered dating a display of affection, but anyway. And all of that stuff. Here is the thing. If you break that code and engage in any, quote, inappropriate personal contact, you can be punished by a $300 fine, 30 hours of community service, and possibly being thrown out of the university. So here's the issue. There are consensual violations of the Liberty Way, and then there are non-consensual violations of the Liberty Way. You might think that perhaps they would distinguish between those two things, but they're not interested in that. 3 students recall being made to sign forms acknowledging possible violations of the Liberty Way after they sought to file complaints about sexual assaults. Others say they were even warned against reporting what had happened to them. Students say that even Liberty University police officers discouraged victims from pursuing charges after reporting assaults. So these students were assaulted and they're being told that they violated the code of conduct. And it goes even more in depth in this case. You have students who confided in school staff, and then eventually those school staff, although they're legally required to report the assaults, chose not to do so. Let's see, when students filed complaints themselves, they were often not given legally required notice that they had the option of going to the police, because again, the school staff didn't want them to go to the police. And I wanna give you an individual example of this. So let's see, we have Diane Stargell, back in the fall of 2013, sought the help of the university's mental health counselors, telling a counselor she'd met that she'd been raped by another student at a party off campus. Stargell recalled that the counselor listened and then asked her to sign a victim notice that warned she could be found to have broken the Liberty Way if she chose to move forward. Terrified of losing her scholarship, she signed the paper and did not formally report being assaulted. She says, "I feel like Liberty bullied me into silence after what happened to me. I've always regretted that I never got my day in court." Another student, Amanda Stevens, was told that if she were to report the fact that she'd been raped, she could be in trouble for drinking. Although she had not been drinking at the time of the assault, I guess it was a party, so that's close enough for them. Having premarital sex, she was raped, and they're considering that premarital sex. And just being alone with a man on campus. This is insanity. We hear about stuff like this in Saudi Arabia, places like that, where women are in trouble for their own assault. This is in America. This is a university that's been around for 50 plus years, and they're treating the victims as the perpetrators of something immoral.
It's protocol. It's protocol. It's by the book. Anytime there's this structure of people in power, they want to do whatever they want to the people that are not in power. They put together rules that if they violate them, they get to punish them separate from the possible victims that they could become. It's exactly what it is. Anytime these types of structures, and especially when they use something like your religious beliefs as something to hold over your head, and you can't break the Liberty Way. But the Liberty Way becomes this #1 thing in your brain, like a cult, so that anything else that happens to you literally doesn't matter. Whatever your violations that were done to you, if you were raped, if you were alone and then a man shows up, it's your fault that man showed up and you're alone with him on campus. It's specifically targeting victims before they're even victims, because you know there's gonna be victims. If they didn't know that this would happen, they wouldn't have this structure in place. This is one of the best illustrations of systemic injustice when it comes to something. This is just within the university. So of course, when it's expanded to things like our entire justice system, which has its similar types of things, this is how it happens. It's why rape kits don't get processed. It's why women then get told by the authorities that are supposed to protect them that it's their fault from the beginning. This is just a smaller version of what we see larger.
100%. And this had been going on for a very long time. Finally, the senior vice president of communications was fired after blowing the whistle on this, decided this has gone on too long, we need to do something about this, so Liberty University fired them. So I don't know that they can cover this up at any higher level. That seems like the highest level, but they're working at it. They're working at maintaining a culture, making sure that more things like that happen, if that's the cost of maintaining the reputation. It doesn't just happen at Liberty, by the way.
Absolutely.
Every university has them, so just bear that in mind.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.